Welcome to the Main Character Podcast, where we share a collection of personal stories to create a community and inspire real conversation. I'm your host, Brooke Taylor, and today's main character sharing her story is Chloe Armstrong. Hello, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
My name is Chloe Armstrong. I'm 23. Right now, I work at a flower shop. I make arrangements. I'm a floral designer. I am from Orange County, California. I've lived here my whole life. I'm the oldest of 6 half siblings. Okay. They're all half, but I've grown up with them my whole life, so they're all, I feel weird calling them half. They're my brothers and sisters. But I guess my story starts with how I was born and like my life, I guess. So my mom and my dad had me still in the womb basically when they broke up. I never knew my parents together ever, and they both remarried when I was like 3 and 4, I think. I've had 2 families my whole life.
Did your parents stay married to those people?
My dad, yes, it's their 20-year anniversary this year.
So that stepmom has been your stepmom your whole life?
My whole life. So she is like my second mom. My mom and my stepdad split when I was probably a senior in high school. But yeah, they haven't been like together, like acting, being a married couple, whatever, since, probably 6th grade.
Who did you live with?
I lived with both families my whole life, almost 50-50. I think my mom had me like 4 days a week. My dad had me 3 for most of like my elementary life.
You had one school.
One school.
You'd go home to 2 different houses.
Yes. I started living with my dad full time after high school.
You have siblings on both sides?
Yes.
How many on each?
I have 2 siblings on my mom's side, and I have 3 on my dad's side.
So they were like full siblings and staying at one house.
Yeah.
So you were the only one like here sometimes and here not.
Yeah.
Was that weird?
For me, no, because that's all I've ever known. But as I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, it's probably weird for my siblings.
Going back and forth between both families, what was the environment at your dad's house?
My dad, growing up, I thought was like way more strict, but loving. And I feel like I always received his correction very well. Even if I was annoyed, I like always knew that he meant well and that he disciplined me for a reason. My dad was just really good at sticking to like what he believed, like his convictions, and he wasn't willing to like compromise based on what I would think of him, or like if I would be mad at him for him saying no to me going somewhere or doing something. And then my mom's house was definitely, it felt more lenient. I don't know, me and my mom were just like besties basically, so it was kind of like whatever I want to do that would make me happy, then let me do it. And I loved that as a kid, like the freedom of that. But I think growing up, I really started to like realize like what was actually good for my like character. That's something that I look back on and I'm like, my dad really was like training me to guard my heart and like be disciplined in what I consumed, and being disciplined in the actions that I would take, I guess. Like knowing that there's a consequence for every action, in a healthy way, not like scaring me that things are going to go wrong or like my life is going to be over if I make a bad decision. But it just made me very conscious of the decisions I made in a good way, I think.
I think there really are 2 different types of parenting where at some point you're going to learn the lesson. So either you learn it with your parents in their supervision kind of, and then as an adult you're prepared, or you kind of like just have fun as a kid, but then you come into the real world and it's like, okay, now I'm going to learn it not with my parents, but like with the harsh reality of the world. But I think it's interesting you had both perspectives, because most people only get one. So I'm sure, like, as you were saying, when you were a kid, being at your mom's is like, yes, I get to do whatever I want. Like, who cares? But I think it's kind of good that you had both to then, like, find your middle ground of saying, oh, this is why what I like about both.
Yes, totally. And I'm so grateful for that. And that's been like a blessing and a curse because I feel like it definitely made me grow up quicker because there were like such polar opposites in that sense. But it's been such a blessing because I feel like I can relate to a lot of people, and it's given me a perspective where like most people only see one side. Like their family is their family. They don't know anything else. But I have such differing sides that I've grown up with. And I don't know, I think it's just given me a deeper perspective of different kinds of family lives.
When you parent kids in general, I think it's so important that you do the work before you have kids, because your kids are going to become mini versions of you. Mm-hmm. As they grow up, they can say, okay, I want to be exactly like them. Like you just said, your dad's celebrating his 20th year. Like, hey, this is what I'm striving for. What did they do right? Let me model my relationship after them. Or if you saw like your mom in pain with her divorce, you say, okay, what went wrong there? How can I not replicate that?
Exactly. For me, I can learn from that. And I think she takes that as a bad thing, that like, that I don't want it to be like that, but it's like, that's just the obvious. Like, I don't want to be divorced. I don't want to marry someone that's not right for me. I don't want to marry someone because I feel like I have to, or I think that's nothing to be ashamed of. I think that's just fact. And I think that's just like, it's good that I've seen that. And I know that that's not what I want. And it's sad that my mom like had to go through that.
I mean, I do think that although it doesn't necessarily show you the relationship that you want, it does show you like how to pick yourself up and how to persevere and keep going and not let that like hold you down. And I also think that as sad as it is that she went through it, because you were able to see that, you don't have to go through that yourself. Because most people, they at some point or the other, like if they haven't seen that, they're like, oh, I don't, they settle for things. And so then they do it themselves. And it's like, well, I just saw that, so now I know what I don't want to experience. And that's such a big learning thing that she saved you from having to experience that pain.
My mom is just the best, like wants the best for me, loves the heck out of me, would do anything for me, would do anything for my brother and sister, like literally loves us to death. She had like a lot of pain and a lot in her life that like she didn't know how to take care of and how to deal with. My grandma, my mom's mom, killed herself. That happened, I guess, right before she found out she was pregnant with me. Okay. Or like right when she found out she was pregnant with me. So I was always like her crutch basically, and like she just had this idea of like what a mom and a daughter should be.
What was that idea?
They are best friends. Like, we will just be best friends forever. And that's kind of how our relationship has been. My entire life was her just wanting us to be best friends. It wasn't like she was my mom. It was like, I'm your best friend. So like, I'm going to share with you everything that I'm feeling, everything that I'm thinking, everything that's going on in my life. As a kid, like, I can't control that. I don't know. Like, and that's just my mom. I don't know what moms are supposed to do or not. But then like over the years looking back, I'm like, I don't know anything about like my dad or my stepmom's issues. I don't know. And of course there are, like every married couple, every person has problems, issues, things that come up, whatever. But like, I couldn't even tell you what those things were because they just didn't talk about that. My dad and my stepmom guarding my heart, guarding the kids' hearts, guarding our minds. And so that was like a big thing where I was just too in the loop with like everything that was going on, everything that my mom felt, everything that she was thinking, everything that was happening. And it just was kind of like a burden to me.
Well, I had that experience too with my mom. I think my mom really thought that I was her best friend, and she loved hanging out with me, like the same feeling you get from hanging out with your best friend. The problem is that when you're a child, you don't get a say, right? And you don't have a decision. So if it's me and you, if you choose to move to Elsinore, you can do that. And I'll stay in my house and like we'll talk on the phone, but that's not affecting my life. Obviously it's not, even because you're her child and it's supposed to be that way. But with that comes like a guidance and like, okay, I'm going to make this the best decision for both of us, where you can't have the same mindset that you'd have sitting next to your best friend. When my mom was like that to me, I was like, I want to be your best friend. I want to know everything. But at the same time, it's like, oh, you're fighting with my dad. What am I supposed to do with that? Like, I can't help it. I can't give you advice because I'm 7.
Exactly.
You know, whereas if you told me you were fighting with something, like, I could say something.
Exactly. And I think that comes with age. And I think it just wasn't like there was never a filter of like, oh, she's not ready. Like, she can't help me with this. She doesn't. It was just like kind of, yeah, thrown at me. I didn't have control over what I was being told. And I think that has a lot to do with like having a spouse that is that person that you can talk through with, like not having a healthy relationship, like that should be your person to go through things with. And then also friends, like you should have a best friend that isn't your daughter that you can talk to those things about, that is your age or that has been through something similar or can relate at some level. And it was like there was just no one for her, so I can sympathize with her in that like that is lonely and sad.
I also think what you were saying about like your husband being that for you, because realistically, like what goes on in your household, no one's going to quite understand when they don't live in the house. Yeah. So even if you have a best friend who you see every day and you talk to every day, when they're not in that environment, they're only hearing your perception. Whereas like your kid will hear what you say, but also witness and like what's going on and be in that environment. So that's why it's like when you have your spouse, they're getting they know they're watching it and they're listening and they're like really there through it. When you're literally a child, your brain just doesn't understand and you don't have the life experience to know anything.
Certain things that would happen, and if I didn't react the way that she expected, then it was like I don't love her. So just stuff like that. Like she just really needed my validation, the validation coming from me that like she is a good mom, that she is a good person. And like I was a kid, I don't know, and like every kid gets annoyed at their parents sometimes, but it was like if I was annoyed with her, like I thought that she was the worst person ever and that I hated her and that I'm better off just living with my dad and all this stuff. So
your mom was seeking approval from you.
Yes. Whatever I did, she would support it. She would never really stop me from doing anything, even if it was like bad. Like when it came to like guys or like whatever, it was just like, no mom, like I promise he's cool or he's nice, like whatever. It was like she had no, like she would basically just be like, oh cool, okay, like I believe you. Like she, you know, like not like a parent in that way where you would be like asking questions or like looking into it. It was just kind of like, okay, bestie, like, go you.
Do you feel like that was good in the sense that, I don't know, I feel like on the opposite end, if someone's really, if a parent is super strict, then your kid just lies, right? Because I kind of feel like teenagers are going to do whatever they want to do anyways. Yeah. Especially when it comes to a guy that they like.
I think there's just a difference between like, no, actually, he can't spend the night under my roof. Mm-hmm. Like, that's something that you should say as a parent. Just stuff like that, where it's like not using the excuse of, well, they'll do what they want anyways.
So you feel like she gave you tools and like enabled you to do it.
Yes. That was like a big thing with like the difference of discernment and like conviction between my parents.
So let's rewind a little bit. So when did you first start liking boys?
My first boyfriend, we locked eyes in kindergarten.
Locked eyes?
We locked eyes from across the room and we put our lunch boxes in the same cubby and it was official. We had some bumps in the road, but we loved each other.
In the whole 24-hour relationship?
No, literally from kindergarten to 10th grade. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
There were bumps in the road. There were major bumps, some bigger than others. We weren't like boyfriend and girlfriend until like 7th grade probably. And then we broke up probably like my freshman year.
That's a long time.
Oh, I know. No, yeah, we loved each other.
Kindergarten, you meet this boy. And you're best friends till 7th grade? Is it more than that?
I mean, we like had a crush on each other, kind of. But yeah, we're just like best friends.
Because you had 2 lives, did you like manipulate that a little bit?
Yeah, I knew what I could do at my mom's and what I couldn't do at my dad's, so I would like plan around that.
And did your dad change his parenting style because he knew what was going on at your mom's?
He didn't compare himself. He knew what was right, and he knew what he needed to do as a parent, and he didn't let anything else affect that. He just thought that if he did his part and like let God take care of it, he had to come to the realization that like I am God's daughter, like before his daughter. And so he was responsible for how he parented me when he had me, but when I would go anywhere else, when I would go to my mom's, when I would go to school, anywhere, like I was God's, and he just had to trust that. So he didn't really, there was nothing to do, nothing he could do or could say.
Do you feel like because your dad was stricter, you lied to him more?
Not lied. I mean, not telling the truth, like not offering the truth, I guess is still lying. But if he ever like asked me about something, I don't think I was dishonest.
Do you feel like with your mom, because you knew she didn't like get upset about things, that you would tell her more and ask for advice from her?
Yes. That was good in the sense that I felt like I could tell her everything and then I could talk to her, and I felt safe looking back. Don't ask for advice from someone who's going to give you the answer that you want. In that sense, it was like I mentioned before, no matter what I said or did, it was kind of just there was support and there wasn't really correction. There wasn't really direction. It was just kind of like, okay, you can tell me, but then like I don't really have anything to like
guide you on.
Yeah.
Because I do think that style of parenting can work if you were to come to her and say, hey, I like this guy, what should I do? And then she offered sound advice. Yes. I think that in some ways can be a good thing because you have the trust and like you're not hiding things. Like you just said, like at your dad's, you're like, I went out and did things he didn't know about, and then I went home and pretended it didn't happen. So I think that can be a good thing, but you need to have that parent who's gonna tell you, hey, like he's probably cheating on you or like whatever it is. Yeah. Whereas like it sounds like your mom was just kind of like, take the experience. Okay, so you have this kindergarten boyfriend. Yeah. And so in 7th grade, it then turns into something more.
Yes.
Okay, so you become official. What does that mean?
That's a good question. We didn't even kiss until the day of 8th grade graduation. So we would just hug a lot.
Okay, so you finally kiss at the end of 8th grade. So does more happen with him?
Of course, like you have a boyfriend and you like start kissing and then you're like, oh, you start to like feel things. Like, I don't know. So I remember being in his jacuzzi in broad daylight. Literally, we would just like make out in his jacuzzi and his parents would be home. I'm like, that is so awkward. But I just remember saying, are we going to have sex? Like eventually. Like I was like, are we going to? Not there in the jacuzzi in broad daylight, but just like in general, like just with the way things were going. And he was just like, I don't know. Things started to progress and things were happening. And I was like, I don't know. Like I obviously like enjoyed it because that's a human thing. But I was just like, I just did not feel right about it. Like I really believe in my heart that I don't want to have sex. And so I think I just kind of like I just thought about it a lot. And so anytime like he would come over and like or we would be together and like things would happen, I would just like not like I would just like stop it and I would like push it away, and then eventually we broke up.
Can you tell me about what conviction means? Like what you felt?
I think it's more so like just wanting to do the right thing. Like like my spirit just knew what was right, and I felt like I would legit be disregarding truth if I did that, and I hated the thought of that. And I knew that like everything that my dad had taught me, and my dad wouldn't like talk about sex with me.
What would he teach you?
He would more speak from like a guy's perspective. Like all he would have to say was like, trust me, like do not wear that unless you like want a guy to. And sometimes he would be graphic with me. Like, he's like, literally, like, some guy's gonna go home and, like, jerk off to that if you wear that. And I'm like, oh, like, so scared. But, like, it would make me think. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want that. I wouldn't feel good knowing that like I'm making someone else feel that way, or that like I look that way in someone's eyes. And my mom was always like, if you end up wanting to have sex, just let me know, and I will get you birth control, like all this. Like she was very like, just tell me and like I will support you, like literally just the pattern of that. Like, but I just didn't, I don't know what, I really just feel like God just had it instilled in my heart that like I just knew that that wasn't for me.
I think it's interesting that no one necessarily told you, like, don't do this. Just it wasn't something that you wanted. And I also think it's interesting in the hot tub, you have this almost realization. It's like, if we stay on the trajectory that we are currently on, that's where the train is heading. So then it sounds like you just like started questioning, like, do I even want to be on this train? Like, time to hop off. And I think it's cool that you like had enough insight to not just kind of go wherever the guy was telling you to go, or even your mom was telling you to go, but you were like, what do I actually want? What makes sense to me? And I'm going to make my own decision and go against like what's cool or what society is telling me I should do, or like everyone talks about how amazing sex is, and you're like, I don't think that this is like what I want. And I don't think you should ever have sex, whether you've had sex before or not, if you feel that way.
Yeah. It just comes down to the conviction, I guess, and just knowing the repercussions and just seeing what that's looked like in other people's lives too. I think I just learn a lot from, and it goes back to like just trusting my dad. Like I just trust what I see in other people's lives and like the fruit of other people's lives. I feel like I've been so sensitive to that my whole life. Like, they seem to have good relationships. They seem to have this. They seem to have this. Like, what are they doing right? If I see the issues that come from like sleeping around with all these people, then it's like, I want nothing to do with that. I'm also not the person to like do anything be out of peer pressure, no matter what it is. I am just like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm cool. I really, truly do not feel like I need to do something to fit in or to win the approval of people. I'm just like, no, like, so that was another thing too. Like, I wasn't just going to do something because he wanted to and I like felt bad. I guess the only thing that did follow me, that like I did learn from it, and maybe that's why it's like lasted so long for me, is that like if someone's gonna break up with me because I won't have sex with them, then I am not gonna be with you then. Right. Like so that's been like a really big thing for me too in relationships in general. Like I just like compromise is not an option for me, and that's why, I mean, like I said, I had some random relationships in high school that were like literally 2 seconds. But again, I like would see something like a guy talking to me a certain way, lying to me, and I'm like, stop it there and cut off. But besides that, I really like I haven't like just gotten into relationships because I'm lonely and I just want a boyfriend, which are two valid things. Yeah, I just really feel like God has someone for me, and I'm not gonna have to like strive for it. It's just gonna happen. They're gonna have the same beliefs as me on that front and on other fronts, and like that's been another thing too. I've never felt peer pressure to do things, but I have felt like I've had to alter my personality or like the little things that I do, or like my humor, stuff like that, to like make guys like me. Because of course it's not like I'm just like no relationships ever until like God reveals my husband to me. It's not like that. I have always wanted a boyfriend and like was actively searching. Yeah, I felt like I had to kind of like, maybe I won't like make that joke that I normally would, like, or just like stuff like that.
No, I think that's like a good point, because one, I think it's very cool that you had this perspective in high school, because I feel like middle school, high school, we're going through this mental maturity of I want to fit in and I want to be liked, and that's like everyone's biggest priority. So for you to say, I don't care if you like me, I'm not going to change who I am and what I believe, it's like a really big deal. And in terms of tweaking things, I feel like when we have a crush on someone or like someone, we're like, okay, what do they like? I think it's really easy. Oh, I like this person, I want them to like me. Like, But what you were saying is like if you hold out and like don't try to change yourself, eventually someone will like you. And you see it in movies and you hear stories. Like I've seen relationships where it's like this person literally didn't try at all, and the guy's like going home dreaming about them, like writing them letters, all these things. And I don't know, I feel like for me and society and like how our society makes things seem, it's like, oh, well, the guy just wants to have sex, and if you're not going to put out, like, he's gone. And it's like, no, there are guys, not a lot, but there are guys out there who really feel the same way we do. And it's like, I want my wife. If you're out there, there's going to be a guy out there too.
I don't expect the person that I end up with to be a virgin. Forget your past relationships, but what is our relationship going to look like, and how are we going to remain pure, and how are we going to handle things differently? God's just been like really showing me who he like truly is, and it's really like restored my view of him and like myself, because I'm just like I've always been so hard on myself, and I think a lot of that came from overcompensating with like my mom. When things weren't taken responsibility for, I like would look at that and I would be like, I never want to like be that person, so like I'm gonna take responsibility for everything. So I just assume everything's my fault. I need to be better at this. What am I doing wrong? Like everything was like, what, I need to be better, I need to be perfect, I need to blah 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 blah. And so God's just been like breaking that off of me a lot, and I've seen it, and I really feel like I can just be myself. And I've seen people / someone like me for that. I literally haven't done any, like I haven't held back any part of me, because I didn't see him in that way at first. So there was no need to, like I wasn't trying to impress anyone.
The relationships that start as friendships, it seems like those are the best, because when you like someone right away, it's like, oh, I want to impress them. I want, like, you already have almost like an ulterior motive. Whereas when you are friends with someone, it's like, oh, you get to know each other. There's obviously no pressure of sex because you're just friends. Oh, yeah. And then when it does turn into something more, you already have that, like, I know how to be your friend. So not that you stay friends, but like the not having sex and the intimacy part.
It's not hard to refrain from that because you already like the person
for who they are.
Yes. And that has always been the way that I knew that I would like meet my person. It would be someone that I know and that I'm friends with before like I ever even go on a date with them, because one of my cousins would always, like, over the years, she would be like, just go on dates with people, like it's fun, just like get to know people, like get free dinner, like whatever. And I'm just like, that is no, like I just don't have any interest in that. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to try and like force myself to get to know someone or vice versa. There's a lot of pressure when you're like going on a first date with someone that you like don't really know that well, and you feel like you have to hold back kind of, because you're like, I don't know what they're going to think is weird or not. So anyways, yeah, it's just been really sweet in that sense, where I'm like, there's so much we have in common, and we have the same humor. He literally thinks I'm the funniest person in the world.
I think that the other part is when you're friends for like with anybody, not that you tell them like the worst parts of yourself, but you kind of are like, hey, like I'm struggling with this, or, you know, you just talk so much more freely. Whereas when you go on a date with someone, it's like, I'm going to hide my skeletons and I'm going to put my best foot forward and almost like pretend to be someone I'm not sometimes. Not everyone does that, but a lot of people are like, you know, let me really show you the best version of me. And then as you get to know them, then it's like, oh, I didn't know this, and then you start to not like them. Whereas like if you're friends first and they're starting off knowing the worst parts of you, then when they see the best parts, it's like, oh my gosh, like this is so much better. But then you like grow to love that person as your friend, and then once you're like your lens shifts, it's like, oh, I already know all the worst things and I love them anyways. Not, oh, I love them for the best version of themselves and I don't like the other parts.
Yeah.
You had said that you wanted to have sex, or you want to have sex, but you know it's not the right thing for you, right? And you've also said that you kind of have pushed the line a little bit. Mm-hmm. when you've pushed past the boundary you've set for yourself, how do you, one, not let that dictate your next decision? Like, oh, I already did this, so screw it. But also, like, how do you then, like, forgive yourself and say, just because I did that doesn't change me and all those things?
So my problem was my boundary was sex, and that was it, where it should have been way before that. Like, I just was like, yeah, I'm not gonna have sex, so I'm fine. But then other things would happen, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I hate myself. And that's just because I'm hard on myself. I've forgiven myself for that. And
But how?
because God is gracious and he sees us as holy, which is, it literally blows my mind. But like, we are holy because he is holy if we see ourselves that way, which is crazy. It took a long time for me to like forgive myself for like the old things that I did. It really just came down to not letting the devil literally like hold it over my head. Like, I was allowing him to do that. And it's like, actually, no.
Well, and I think that realistically, what you've chosen to do in the past, it's like in the past. So to sit there and like be upset about it, you can't go back and change it. I think really what determines if you've grown and matured at all from that situation is what you're gonna, like, the decision you're gonna make the next time. So it's like, if you are sitting here upset with yourself because you went too far with a guy in the past, it's like, okay, well, with the next guy, am I gonna do that again or am I not? And if you're not, then it's like, okay, well, I've learned from that and let's move forward.
Looking back, and this is how my future relationships will be, just having a boundary that's like, I'm not even going to set myself up to like want to give in to that temptation. So whether it's like literally making out, like I'll let myself like kiss this person, but if we start to make out, like we got to stop, because, and I don't know what that boundary is yet because I haven't like been in a relationship with someone literally since 10th grade with that whole situation. When the time comes, figuring out what the boundary is, like literally a boundary, like one of those walls is, what is it, at prisons or something, where they have like a fence but then they have a wall. So it's like, here's the fence, but we're gonna build it like 10 feet out, so just in case if like you kind of go over, there's still so much room between like the real border. I am so hard on myself, like I said, and I just want to please God so bad. I just want to be faithful and I want to be obedient and I want to like please God, but like I am a human and there's nothing I can do to like impress him. And I know like obviously there's nothing I can do to earn salvation or anything, but then I was like, I can't have a boyfriend because I need to work on this and I still need to work on this in my heart, and God needs to help me with this and my thoughts in this area and this and this. And I'm just like, I'm just not. But my dad was like, at what point will you be ready then? Like, how can you believe that God literally sent his son Jesus to die for us for free? Like, salvation is free, but you have to pay. Like, you need to do some things to, if you want a husband, if you want a relationship, you're gonna have to do this and this. No. And I was just like, oh, that literally changed my perspective. I'm like, because that's how I have viewed relationships over the last couple of years, is like, okay, I just need to like be the best I can be so I can be perfect for my husband or for my boyfriend. I want to be the girl that he needs me to be. He needs to be the guy that I need him to be. But it's like, we can't be perfect. I struggle so much with perfectionism in every aspect. And it's like, that's just not realistic. I will never be perfect. God just gives gifts to us like that out of the kindness of his heart and his nature. Like, he wants to give us good gifts. And I'm just like, wow, thank you, God. And literally just like realizing that and accepting that has made me like, I don't know, I just feel so like content. And I'm like, oh, I don't have to do X, Y, and Z for God to bless me. I can do these certain things and work on these certain things, and maybe it'll help me once I get into a relationship, but it's not going to determine whether or not I do get one at all. So I don't know. That was like amazing.
Realistically, we set these goals for ourselves of, I want to be this person before I get in a relationship, or I want to be this person before I'm married.
Mm-hmm.
And those are great, but it's not like we get to be this person, then we're just that person forever. Even when you get to that goal that you've set, you're still going to have things to work on. We're always growing. It's not like you just like cap out. Yeah. So at what point are you going to find a husband throughout your journey rather than one day I will be ready? No. And they say that about everything. If you wait till you're ready, it'll never happen or something because you'll never be ready.
The enemy will only remind you of your past because he's after your destiny.
I think that's really true.
Yeah. And he doesn't, I think she also said the enemy doesn't care about your past, but he'll bring it up because he's after your destiny.
Well, and also, God doesn't care about your past either. Yeah. Like, the only people who care about your past are you feeling like regret or wanting to go back and change it. And I mean, maybe like other humans, but if they care about that, it's a bigger reflection on them because you made those decisions in a certain mindset that you may no longer be in. Just because you once made decisions doesn't mean you would make them again. So I think that that's really good advice for people who are struggling with a decision that they made that they wish they could change. It's like, we can't change them, but from this day forward, how we choose to change our behavior and our thought and like take something away from that lesson, I think that's the important part. You had this need to take responsibility for things that maybe weren't necessarily even yours to take responsibility for in this seek of being perfect and like earning something from God. What happened that you realized, okay, I don't need to be perfect and I don't need to change to make a guy like me. Like, I can just be me and that is enough. Like, how did you get to that?
The first part of it was honestly not letting my relationship with my mom dictate my mood and my attitude. I don't know how much that like directly relates to that question, but that's the first thing I think of because I feel like my heart has just been like softened because I think that was something that was so like hot inside my heart. I was just easily irritated and annoyed and like blah blah blah, and it was because I ended up allowing myself to be a victim of whatever it was I felt like my mom had put on me. So really just not allowing myself to be a victim and just having the mindset of like, all I can do is just be me and love her, love my mom, love my family, love my dad, love my friends. I can't put, I don't know. I came to the point where I'm like, I just can't put pressure on myself to be what everyone needs me to be. And I feel like that sounds cliche, but truly, like, I just had such a burden of like, I'm responsible for people's feelings. I'm responsible for like making people feel like they have a friend, that they're seen, like all this stuff. Like, I just put it all on myself, and it came to the point where I was like, I can't do that. And it was getting bad where I would overcompensate, and I'm like, well, I'm not responsible for your feelings, so like, don't put that on me. Like, I don't have to hang out with you. I don't have to do this. It like reversed for a while. And it was bad, but now being like, I can't do that, and I don't expect myself to be that person for everyone.
It sounds like you at first took on the responsibility of others' feelings, but then you weren't taking responsibility for how you felt, your part in it, and you were just saying like, oh, you felt like a victim almost to your circumstances. Whereas now it seems like instead of taking responsibility for other people, you're taking responsibility for your life and how you respond.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, like, we can't always change our circumstances. Like, you couldn't change your family dynamic. You can't maybe change like where you live or whatever it is, but you can change how you respond to situations and how you show love to your mom or like to whoever, like the words you use, all these things. Like, you can take responsibility of what you make things even mean to you and like the perspective you have. So through your journey to decide to not have sex and through like forgiveness of yourself and like different family situations and all these different things, it seems like God's been a pretty big factor to help you figure out like right from wrong and forgiveness and all these things. Have you always had a relationship with him?
Yes. I grew up a Christian, grew up going to church, grew up going to Christian school. I remember being in a chapel in, I think it was 8th grade or 7th grade, and the pastor saying something like, I know, like, we as humans want to do our own thing and like say no to God and just live our lives the way we want to, blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking in my head, like, what does that even mean? Like, what does he mean, say no to? Like, I didn't know what that meant because I wasn't old enough yet or had experience enough yet to know that, like, there are decisions that we make that are deliberately disobeying God. I saw that become more real as the years went on, and then especially over the last like 6 years, ever since I graduated high school, like I've seen that probably the most in my life, where like now I have a clear, conscious vision, idea of like what God wants me to do. Like God speaks to me, and like I have the choice to obey him or not. He's just been so kind to like literally guard me. Like, I don't know, I just feel his like protection over my heart and my mind. And I'm just so like thankful. And I think that's why I tend to like steer to the point of like, God, I just want to like honor you. I just want to do what's right, because I see so much now, like how much disobedience I have the potential of, and like how far away people and myself can go away from him. And like I only want to do what he wants me to do. And it's to my detriment.
And also seeing yourself through the lens that Jesus has for you.
Yeah. And it's so sweet. He's really just been like revealing his heart to me, and like has been just giving me so much peace, and like letting me really just see him for the loving God that he is, and not just the God that constantly wants you to do better and calling you higher and judgment and like all of that. And I never thought that that's the view that I had of him, but it has been. Yeah, I have had like a religious mindset unknowingly, that like I have to do these things and I have to do this and I can't do that and I can't say this and I have to say this, whatever. And like God's just been like breaking all of that off and just like, no, like literally just sit with me and I love you and that's it.
It's a lot simpler than we make it.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a lot more angry and upset with ourselves than I feel like God does. Like God wants us to do things, and he knows that if we make certain decisions that it will be better for us. At the end of the day, he's still going to love us the same, whether we do the bad choice or the right choice. Like if we are blatantly disobedient to him, it doesn't mean he loves us less. Like, is he maybe a little disappointed because he knows that there's better out there for us? Sure, but that doesn't mean, one, you can't change that decision and say, I'm messing up, I'm going to change this, and he'll still be there with his arms open. So I think it's interesting to put into perspective, because like, oh, fear God and like judgment day and all these things. And like, although that is very real, it's also, we have a very loving God who loves us so much more than we can even love ourselves. And so to say like, hey, I'm going to give myself grace, because that's what he wants us to do, and forgive myself and look at ourselves, because it's one thing to like love other people that way, but even ourselves, like if we hate ourselves, we can't give to other people. So to learn God made us intentionally, and like I don't have to work for it. I can just sit with that and love myself. When you were dating your boyfriend, you're like, well, maybe if we dated longer, I don't know, I maybe would have done it. When did it go from an idea, oh, maybe I shouldn't, to this is something, my new boundary?
Honestly, I feel like recently, because I guess for a while I wasn't really thinking about sex specifically. I was just more thinking of relationships. Like, I'm not going to compromise in relationships, and that's why I never even got close to, because I was like, I'm not going to date these stupid boys in high school and these stupid boys out of high school that like whatever. I just didn't want to waste my time in general. But I think I remember saying to myself, or to other people even, like, I want to wait till marriage, but I mean, we'll see. Like, if I get a boyfriend, like, I don't know. Like, I kind of wasn't, I knew it. I knew that God would want me to wait, but I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Until probably the last 2 years, where I'm just like, yeah, like this, I've come this far, and it's like, I really, as I get older and like see other people's relationships and see what kind of guys there are out there that I want nothing to do with, I'm just like, I don't know. I just think it's sweet, like knowing that I'll only know one person that way. And I don't want anyone to compare to. It's very like special to me now. Like I guess it always kind of has been.
Well, I think that the world has stripped the idea of sex to make it so like woman empowerment and give your body to everyone and it's empowering you. Yeah. And it's taken the like actual intimacy so far out of sex, where it's like now you get drunk, can't even remember it. Yeah. Like you don't even remember what the guy looks like. Half the time you don't know his name or his last name, where he lives, you know nothing about them. And then you're just exchanging your body with them simply for like a few minutes of feeling good. Yeah. And I don't think that, one, that's how you have the best sex. Yeah. And it often leaves like after those 10 minutes or however long it is, it's like so empty because you just gave like this part of yourself to someone who you literally don't know at all. I also think that sex keeps people together for so much longer than they need to be. Like who knows how long you guys would have dated or like what you're willing to put up with because you're having good sex. When in reality, if you wait to have sex, people really have to get to know you, not just your body, but like, hey, do I have the same sense of humor as this person? You know, do I like them even on their bad days? Am I willing to put up with the hard things rather than just, oh, well, I have good sex, so I'm not going to leave, or like, I'll put up with this.
And I think going along with the theme of me just like trusting that like my dad knows what's best for me, so I'm going to listen to him. Like God is like the Lord of my life and my heavenly Father. Like if he says it in his word that sex is to be had in the covenant of marriage, then I'm going to take him for his word and believe that that's for a reason and that it is to guard my heart. That is something that is to bring closeness. It's to bring intimacy. It's honestly to reflect like the intimacy of God and us and like the church, like we are his bride. I just think that it's such an important thing. And Pastor Mark always says something like the enemy will do everything he can to get you in bed with everyone before you're married, and he'll do everything he can to get you out of bed with your spouse when you are married. And that's so true because the world is so driven by sex. It's crazy. Like that's like probably one of the biggest things that the enemy uses to like distract us. And it's true. It's like have sex with anyone you want before you're married, like blah, 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 figure out what you like, da, 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 da. But then it's like when you're married, then it's like, no, like you don't like, no, it's not fun or they're not good or whatever, like whatever, blah, blah. And it like, then it's like splits you up in that way. Like it's just crazy how it can be used in such the wrong way.
Yeah. Well, one, I think that sex is really meant to exchange love, and when you're having sex with someone that you don't love or who doesn't love you back, like there's no safety there, and it's such a vulnerable thing to do. Yeah. That how can you like have sex and be vulnerable while also like guarding your heart and like your mind and all these things? Like it doesn't, you want to be aligned between your mind and like want to do it and your heart because you love the person and like everything makes sense that way. But also if you've had all these other experiences, once you are with your partner, it's like, what do you have to explore? And it's like, I would rather figure out what I like and dislike with you, because realistically, even if you like something with someone else, you're not going to like the same thing necessarily with that person, and get to like have all these first and new things together. The world tries to convince us of why it's so great. And it's like, what if you discover you love something and then you get married and that person doesn't do it? Like now what? You know, I don't know. What advice would you give to someone who is currently a virgin saying, is it worth it to wait? Like, should I just give it up? And then also to someone who maybe has had sex, but is then like reconsidering and maybe like becoming a born again virgin.
It's hard for me to give advice because I just have my own convictions. And to me, it really comes down to like what God is asking me to do. So I guess my advice would be to ask God what he's asking you to do. I don't know. I guess I'm just a very trusting person, and I trust that what he says is right and best for me. Creating those boundaries, knowing what you want out of a relationship, what you don't want, what you would hope the guy that you're with would honor. I was just lonely and like excited to get a boyfriend and whatever, but like my relationship with God has never been stronger, and I look back and think, ew, why did I think I was ready? Absolutely not, because I was just searching for validation in a boyfriend and someone liking me, someone thinking I'm pretty, someone that wants to like hang out with me and talk to me, whatever, and not compromising. I think compromise is huge. Compromise is like the biggest thing. Just because he's all of these things, but like he wants to have sex, it's like, just no. Then he's not all the things. He's all the things but this. There will be someone that will have all the things, and that there isn't a reason to compromise, and like let God teach you what he wants to teach you in your season of singleness, and let him work out the things that he wants to work out so that you're more prepared going into that relationship. Not believing that you have to do those things for him to give it to you, but that it will help you when it happens.
I feel like in that time it's so hard to be like, I'm trusting God, like there is someone out there better, but at the same time I almost feel like that's a blessing, because if you like love 89 things of them and the 90th thing you don't like, that means that there is literally someone better out there. And not just like, oh, you don't like that they like sneeze funny.
Yeah, not shallow things like that. Like core things that matter that you want in a relationship, those types of things. Not like, I just really want someone with blue eyes and he just doesn't. Like, that's stupid. Absolutely not.
I was talking to my friend about relationships, and I am the biggest victim of this, where I think a lot of women will like so badly want this romantic movie type of relationship, right? With these grand gestures and these like really just thoughtful things. Then we get into relationships and the guy doesn't do them. And so we create these romantic situations that the guy shows up to, and we like talk ourselves into believing he did it. You know, like, well, he's like, for example, okay, making like a special candlelit dinner at home. We'll want this romantic date so badly that we'll cook the dinner and we'll set up the candles and we'll turn the lights off and like we'll do it, and the guy will be there and it's like, oh my gosh, it's so romantic, we had this great time. But it's like, realistically, we do it all. This thing that we create, because it's like, well, the guy we're with isn't doing it, so if I want it, I have to do it myself. I was creating them not for him, but because I wanted them, you know? And it's very different when you do something romantic for someone else to make them happy rather than for your own Disney moment. We convince ourselves that it is a certain way because we create it that way. Or, oh, the guy's such a great listener, when it's really like, we just talk. And like they sit there. And it's not that they're a great listener, but we just don't shut up. And so we give them these traits because we so badly want them to have it. But in reality, if you stop talking, like, would he ask? You know, like if you stop setting up the dinner, like, would he do something romantic? And once I stopped and realized so did all of those other things, it was like, oh, I've just been like in this made up world in my head, and the world he's living in is completely different than the one I'm in, and the way he sees our relationship and what he thinks it is totally different than what I think it is, because I just keep lying to myself because I want it so bad. Instead of like chasing and creating these things, like, and trying to force things, like knowing what it is you want and then just being, and not on that chase of I have to find the person, I have to settle, and I have to make justifications, but saying, okay, this is who I am, this is what I want, and I'm gonna just be on my own. I'm going to pursue God. I'm going to grow within myself until that person comes.
Because we're just friends. Like I have zero expectations. I'm not, but there's little things that he'll do that I'm like, oh, like it makes you feel seen and loved, because you're like, I did not expect that. And I did not ask for that, but it was, and it's like tiny little things, but I'm just like, oh, that like, you saw something so little, the fact that you saw it and like you took care of it for me, like I'm just like, what in the world?
Well, and I think our society has really set the expectation to be bare minimum. No, there will be guys, a guy out there for you who will do those things, and think of you and be so excited about you and tell all his friends and his family about you on the first day after he meets you, just like you do. Like, there will be a guy version of you in the best way possible. Well, you had talked about this a little bit before of just like needing, not necessarily having to sleep with somebody to make them like you, but just changing little things about yourself. And you had written that you didn't necessarily think there was someone out there who would love you exactly how you are. And I feel like, I don't know if society taught me this or where I necessarily got this idea from myself, and I think a lot of women struggle with it, is that we do need to change to make a guy like us. And I know that I sometimes struggle saying, like, I know God's promised me this best out there, and like, there is this perfect guy for me out there. But to like believe, like, oh, there is actually someone out there who's going to love me for me and that I don't need to change for. And thinking that and like knowing that is one thing, but like knowing it deep inside of your heart and like really believing that and living your life that way. I guess talk about your experience feeling that way and overcoming it.
I think it comes down to me just liking someone out of initial attraction and just like wanting the validation of them thinking I'm pretty and liking, like, just the thought of someone liking me is like, I mean, I think for any girl, it's like it feels good to know that someone likes you, that they think you're pretty.
And the attention.
I guess the chase is just fun. Like, you know that like they probably wouldn't be someone that you would like date realistically or like pursue, but it's like out of pride. Yeah, I guess pride has just been a huge thing for me too, like really knocking that down.
Well, and realizing that the chase is really a waste of your time and theirs and like the effort. And although it's fun, it's really an ego boost. And it's not like, once you do it, like, it's not for any goal. Like, you know that you're not going to be with them. You just want the attention. And it's like, when you're comfortable in yourself and like getting validation from yourself, then it's like, I don't care if they think I'm pretty because I think I'm pretty, and that's all that matters.
And I think it's funny because there wasn't initial attraction. Like, that wasn't the thing like that made me interested. It was literally his personality, and that's I don't know. I guess I never thought that would be the initial thing.
Well, and I think that when you base your relationship in attractiveness, your foundation is built on something that's going to change, because realistically, weight's going to change, their hair is going to change, like, they're going to grow wrinkly and saggy, and and so to have your full relationship be founded on, well, I think this person's attractive, then what's going to happen when your wife gets pregnant, or if they have an injury, or like whatever life happens, then you have nothing to, like, you're not built on solid ground. I think it's also good advice when someone is dating, and something I've tried to do while I'm single is knowing what my boundaries are. And even to your point of like, how do you go into this? Like, okay, I've had sex, I haven't had sex, I'm thinking about having sex, like, I'm dating, it's been so long, like, I want this, but I want more. Like, I want a husband, I want a healthy relationship, I want these things. I think the best thing to do is taking the time to say, what are my hard boundaries? Like, if this person has this, I cannot be with them. And when you know those super clear boundaries, and not writing those boundaries on about like a particular person, but saying like, alone, by yourself, not with anyone on mind, but describing the qualities that you want this future relationship that you have. And then, when you are in the single season, saying, just being really clear on that and not justifying and making excuses and saying, well, like, no, it's either they have it or not. And you meet the person and you're like, wait, this person checks all of my boxes. This is everything that I want. If it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean like God's promise isn't real or still standing. It's like, oh, even what I said before, like, there's even someone better out there. And he may use those experiences to show you like what is possible, and like, hey, keep going, because before you thought the only thing out there was mediocre, but here's better.
Whether or not it's him, regardless, God has just shown me so much of what's possible of things that I didn't even realize I valued. And I'm just like, oh, like, yeah, that is important to me, like stuff like that. So whether it's him or not, there's a new standard I have now, and I know it's out there because I've seen it with my own eyes. And I think God has like given him to for me in that way to open my eyes to that.
I think that seeing is believing. And so, because most of us, our experience is, oh, well, they like put up with it because they love me, but they don't really like it. Or we justify it, or we make excuses for it. I think that our expectation is then more of that because we've never known someone to love these things about us. God created us a specific way on purpose and in his image, not, oh, we need to be ashamed of how much we love Disney, but that's just a part of me, and like that's not an accident. And so God created someone else out there who is going to love you for those things, whereas 99 other guys are not going to maybe love you for those things, but love you with those things. Like those like things that make you unique and special is what's going to make that person love you. So your verse and your sweatshirt, what's your verse?
Proverbs 4:23. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. About 2 years ago, probably, I was in LA. Every once in a while, like on the streets of LA, you'll see like something spray painted, and it's some kind of like, I think it's mostly like verses, or it'll say something like an inspiring quote or something, and it's spray painted on the floor. But I remember one night I was with my friends and I saw it said 423, and that's what caught my eye at first. I was like, 423, that's my number. I see it everywhere. I see it every day, 50 times a day. Look. And then it said, protect your heart. And it had like a heart with it. And I was like, what the heck? And then it didn't say Proverbs or anything, but then I kind of was just like, oh, is it that Bible verse? And then I looked it up and I just like connected the dots, and I was like, oh my, and then it felt cool for me because I was like, 423 has always been my number that I see a lot throughout the day and just randomly, like, and so the fact that it was like with that, and it was like guard your heart, like that just felt like such a clear message to me. And so yeah, that it just kind of like became my verse. And like when I look back at my life and everything we just talked about, I just like feel that theme so hard on my life. So yeah, it's one of my favorites. And I just feel like that is my life. That has been my life, and a lot of it hasn't even been myself like choosing to guard my heart, but I feel like God has been so gracious to do that for me in a lot of seasons of my life.
Thank you so much for coming on and being vulnerable and just sharing about the real struggles that you have and how you've gone through them.
Thank you for creating this and like opening up conversations. And I am just excited to see like all the different people that you talk to and the different walks of life that people are in. And I think this is just such like a good thing for people to listen to and realize that they're not alone. And I'm so thankful that you chose me to come here and speak and make this cute crew neck that everyone should buy.
Stay up to date on the next release by subscribing and following us on Instagram at Main Character Collection, where you can also find the link to purchase the crew neck Chloe designed. And as always, remember, your story has a purpose.